So for the final report today for our annual Parochial Church Council meeting, I want to present to you some of my prayerful things as we consider looking forward in 2018 and early 2019, particularly exploring what I think God is calling us to be and do. I want to continue the theme drawing on the gospel reading from this morning and of my teaching this morning as we explore how we not only develop what we do for people who come to church, but increasingly what we do for people in our parish. So that's particularly thinking of the de-churched and the never churched. And this is our parish. And as you can see, we really are not very present and engaged in many parts of our parish that stretches along the shops of the north side of Peckham High Street, right to the library, and then back covering the North Peckham Estate, almost back to Burgess Park, and then back along Peckham Lane and Southampton Way. We are pretty much absent from having any impact on most of these areas. So thinking about these areas of our parish, Jesus often uses the analogy of gardeners to teach the disciples about the importance of us seeking to be present to God and also present to God in our parish. Thinking about the text this morning from John's Gospel, we have the sense that the vineyard is owned by God the Father, where the vine is God the Redeemer, as in Jesus Christ. So thinking about this, we need to consider this in the context of the needs of our parish. We need to care for those who live in our parish, and we need to seek God in what small things we can do to model presence. And it starts, as I said this morning, with all of us submitting to know that Jesus is the vine. He and the Holy Trinity are the stable, strong and core element of our life, which we are totally dependent upon for our health and well-being. We at St Luke's and the various congregations gathered here today are grafted as branches onto the vine. And we are here seeking to serve God so that people can encounter God through what we do, and we hope be transformed into following the way of Jesus, and that way produce fruit from our work together here at St Luke's. Remember that branches of vines in mid to northern Europe, and particularly in the UK, that fruit-bearing branches have to be grafted onto the vines that are frost-resistant and hardy enough to cope with winter, where these vines need branches to be grafted onto them. This takes a lot of skill to do this, and if not managed well, many result in the branches not taking to the vine and die, or bear little or no fruit. So taking this metaphor, I want to explore how we develop in 2018 and 19, drawing on Jesus' teaching, where Jesus is very concerned about us as branches and of the fruit of our ministry as we seek to serve God. So what is the fruit? Well, I want to be focused on a few things to help us move forward. Firstly, we need to grow the numbers of our congregation, coming to our congregations, joining our congregations, and we need much deeper sense of faith and discipleship of those who are gathered. Secondly, we have lost contact with many families, so we need to engage again with more families joining St Luke's and feeling welcomed. We need to do something about the number of young people losing faith, particularly when they get to 18 and then stop attending church and stop practicing their faith. So there needs to be less youth leaving the church as soon as they reach 18. We need to do more around young people and enabling young people and adults to become Christians in the parish. We also need to focus on those in distress or in significant need, that they have room to encounter Jesus for themselves and experience us as being compassionate and caring. How can we do this? How will we get this fruit? How will we become what we seek to be? Well, I do believe that we need to check our motives here, and we need to press a reset button here at St Luke's and come back to the function of church as serving God and seeking to serve God in our lives, and in what we seek to be and do as this place, as an expression of church. So, where Jesus is the vine and I am your lead gardener, and where we are all called to be involved in gardening, I want to look at our challenges through working in God's vineyard, and there is plenty of work to do. So I want to look at 4 areas. Firstly, how do we nourish existing grafted branches? Secondly, how do we fertilise the ground? Thirdly, what pruning is needed to remove unhealthy and dead wood? And lastly, what do we need to be doing in terms of grafting on new branches onto the vine here in the life of St. Luke's? So we need to take a positive attitude to the key branches to ensure they are healthy and fit for bearing fruit. So we need to think about nourishing the existing grafted branches. So we have established a weekly gathering on Wednesday lunchtimes for particularly those who are not working to gather for fellowship and encouragement with drinks and food. We have established an evening congregation and daily prayer that has brought all sorts of people as new participants who are part of this church. We've been trying out different content in our Sunday morning services, seeking to support the worship and community needs of those who gather in our Sunday morning congregation. And finally, we have sustained and developed a focus for those under 12 to learn and explore the Bible and its application for their lives in Sunday morning children's church. So we will need to give thanks for God's provision for these gathered participants and activities as we seek to nourish and support these grafted branches here at St. Luke's. Some have been here for a long time and some are new. We hope that these branches will start to bring new fruit by us nurturing and valuing Jesus as the vine, and that these things that we are doing are important branches as an expression of us serving God. So now thinking about fertilising the ground. So our first task as gardeners is to fertilise. And I, as your lead gardener, I want to give some direction to what needs to happen to keep the existing branching healthy and potentially fruit bearing, and to make ready for new grafted branches to bear new fruit. So the first thing we need to do is to define all roles at St. Luke's, to be clear what each role is about, with clarity about expected and then training to meet these role needs. Importantly, these are roles of function, not roles of status, ego or power. We are here to serve God and not to build little empires that bring disunity and mission drag away from the purposes of God. Secondly, as I have outlined, we need a focus on serving the needs of those in the parish, particularly those who suffer from isolation, poverty, illness and exclusion. Churches have done this since the time of St. Paul, so it's time we stepped up, meeting God's expectations of serving people in this way in this parish. This is a core function of being a Church of England church. We are not just a congregational church. We need to serve in this particular place in North Peckham and not just those who come to worship services. Thirdly, Mother Sandra and the lay leaders group have been exploring further changes to the Sunday morning service. These will be aimed at improving our welcome and our inclusion of younger people, and included within that content that brings life and spiritual depth. Regarding the Sunday evening congregation, we have established a rhythm of differing contemplative forms of worship service, but attendance remains low, and this will need a working group, I believe, of the new monastic community and evening service group to explore how we can expand, promote and develop the service to increase numbers. Brother Sonny was rightly commissioned in late 2017 to lead a full review of the hall. We need to consider how we can use this resource to further God's kingdom, as well as developing a sustainable funding model so the hall not only covers its costs, but we generate income to be able to plan for painting and maintenance. We are aware that there has been a massive change in how the hall is used, as it used to be used by many voluntary sector organisations with local authority funding, but with the withdrawal of so much funding, the use of the hall has dropped. And we remember this is not the fault of the local government. Our local authority here has had a budget cut of 70%, so it is not their fault. Mother Sandra leads the subgroup for youth with an expanding remit to develop a fresh expression for unchurched youth. I still strongly believe that God is leading us to support a new pioneering initiative in Kelly Park, working in partnership with Peckham citizens, the Friends of Kelly Park and the Bradfield Youth Club. The remit is also to make recommendations about starting and developing a Sunday morning youth church for churched youth. That's children over 12 and under 18. Now that we have detailed data for 3 years and an overhauled computer system to help us improve how we manage the finances and the financial planning of this church, I want the PCC to set up a new finance committee to be a subcommittee of the PCC, to help develop standards, transparency and improved financial reporting to the PCC and its regular meetings. Again, I so apologise for the day of this today for this year's accounts, and a timeline will be established to ensure this does not go wrong next year. At the moment, we are totally dependent on Lendl giving many hours of her time each week, and so I think it is time we seek to develop a finance team, not only of Lendl as our treasurer and Catherine Menker as our parish finance officer, but new assistants to help with the enormous administration needed concerning financial management and data entry. We are therefore looking for 1 or 2 people who would want to develop skills in financial administration to join this new volunteer team. Finally, we have a full functioning and working website and a number of social media and web subsites. These are working, but we need to consider our communication strategy to ensure we keep things up to date and on message. And so thirdly, now thinking about pruning unhealthy and dead wood. We do need to think about pruning, which is about cutting back, cutting out the things that do not let existing and newly grafted branches to do well. Pruning is always painful for the branches and not easy to do and actually not easy to lead, but an essential thing to do if there is to be fruit that God expects of us. So what is the pruning we need to do in this year 2018 and 19 regarding pruning unhealthy and dead wood? Firstly, in the last year there has been an almost unbearable amount of interpersonal conflict between us sisters and brothers, particularly in the context of the Sunday morning congregation. I know that a significant amount of our time and energy, and particularly of the clergy team, has gone into dealing with huge levels of conflict and an unwillingness to let go of strongly held convictions or unhealthy patterns of communication and behaviour. After talking this fully through with the church wardens and Jane, our archdeacon, I think it is time we face the culture in this church, which I think has been going on a very long time, not befitting of any expression of the church as the body of Christ, of too much angry confrontation, unhealthy patterns of conflict, and talking behind people's backs, where people do not say what they say to people's faces, which is slander. And I'm also sorry to say there's far too much status-orientated, inappropriate behaviour. If the Sunday morning congregation is to grow, we need to face this change of culture, and this needs severe pruning. The solution to this, I think, is to seek a diocesan grant to bring in a wonderful Christian organisation called Bridge Builders, who help churches deal with sorting out the pain and relational breakdown of church cultures when they get unhealthy. And I am, as the priest in charge, going to insist that this issue be faced head on, which will need your involvement and participation in helping take this congregation back into health. The next pruning, I think, is crucial. There remains far too much focus on this church and what went on as Father Jim Jelly's church and association with him. I cannot and will never be Father Jim. When I was interviewed for this post by the bishop and a panel of people from this congregation, I was clear that I was going to be committed to mission and renewal of this church to return to being a parish church, and I remain committed to this. Father Jim left this church over 5 years ago, and his wife, and he follows a long line of priests and their partners who have served God in this church, and one day too I also will cease to serve God in this parish. So those who are hanging on to what has been and resistant to change, you need to let go. You need to let an ending happen and enable this parish church to look forwards and not look backwards. If you want to be a Christian at St. Luke's, then please let go and allow me to do my job as your priest in charge, and allow St. Luke's to reorientate itself to looking forward here with who is here and who are not here, and where God is wanting us to move and to go on. Bishop Christopher has been greatly concerned and supported me directly that St. Luke's needs to look forwards and not backwards if we are to build a sustainable church here to serve God, which should never be the cult of any particular priest. We are all here to serve God, so please let Father Jim go. He is not here anymore. Please let go. Finally, on pruning, there are a lot of people who are not coming to us. There are a lot of people coming to us who are not easy with really complex needs, who have serious mental health issues, homelessness, addictions, and coming from serious family breakdown with really challenging needs. We must and will love them. There has been too much harshness and judgmentalism towards those who seek our assistance. We have got to learn not to be harsh with those that challenge us. This harshness needs to stop. If anyone on my watch challenges clergy or others about, for example, allowing a homeless person in the hall to use the toilet here again, I will be having very serious words with them. I appreciate that working with these people is not easy, but the hall, the church, and everything we do and have in this Church of St. Luke's is God's, and God expects this church and all churches to join in with God's mission as stewards, which begins with the giving and receiving of respect and love in service to the gospel that begins with compassion and love. And so we move from the pain of pruning to the joy of grafting in new life and new branches into the vine here at St. Luke's. So what does this look like? Well, firstly, in terms of thinking about new branches that we want to graft into the vine, firstly, we're talking about, as a good example, that I think we're learning from other parishes and other types of church, that I want to explore converting what is the Tea with Friends event into a community cafe every Wednesday. This will help us then to serve our parish and promote fellowship. And this is incredibly important as the state becomes more removed from our local community. So we need to step up to be a loving presence in that gap. And we need to therefore promote fellowship with those we have no connection to in service. I'm keen to explore how we can do this well and increase the number who can participate in this. I'm pleased to say that Brother Sonny is helping us by exploring how we can set up workshops and learning events for younger people around entrepreneurialism and business development skills. In association with this, I want to consider the possibility of setting up a Wednesday lunchtime short Eucharist, which will be optional and happen in the church rather than the hall as part of this Wednesday event. We will continue to give refreshments and food, and we're seeking to join up with other charities to be able to get a supply of free vegetables and fruit for those who are really struggling below the poverty line. As part of the mission priorities of the diocese, I will also be leading on a number of soft evangelistic and missional events, seeking to enable those who are unchurched to begin to explore spirituality, and we hope Christian spirituality, in local bars including the Peckham. I hope there will be a connection between this as a mission event to the new monastic community and particularly to the Sunday evening services. I want to see and develop a youth church happening for those over 12 years of age and who are churched. I am concerned by research, and from seeing what happens here often, is that many young people have a received faith from their parents but not an actual developed Christian faith of their own. I am concerned that we respond to the problem that many young people give up on their faith and church when they get to 18 because they define their independence by increasingly rejecting faith. It is therefore, I think, crucial that there is a space for the over 12s to develop worship and community. I am grateful to Sister Fowler and Mother Sandra for completing a listening exercise to help the subcommittee explore what is next. Finally, with the assistance of Father Collins and Mother Sandra and Yemi Arspar, I want to see an expanding and comprehensive pastoral parochial care programme. Already we are seeing more requests for funerals, baptisms and home visiting, including a new residential care home in our parish. I want to see more growth in us serving the pastoral needs of those in this parish. And all of this is not possible if we do not pull together. There is a work for all of us to do. We are workers in the vineyard, and this is what I believe Jesus is calling us to as fellow gardeners. If Jesus is the vine and we are the branches, then we need to act as branches, which means that there has to be some things we have to face as individuals as we come together. If we are to be true to God, true to ourselves and true to our neighbour, then we need to recommit to serving God as the focus of being part of St. Luke's. So what does God want of you and me as gardeners? Well, firstly, a renewed commitment to serving God. So we move away from consumption of worship services to actually serving God in the work of the church. And that's particularly challenging here on a Sunday morning congregation I'm thinking about, which has now become a network church of people travelling here who do not live here anymore and who have very limited time. So there has to be a recommitment to try and find local people as well to be part of all our congregations so that we live a much healthy balance of worship, mission and community as we serve God. Secondly, as you know, we've been trying to deepen our discipleship, and therefore I hope that will lead to an increased restlessness for transformation, not only of ourselves, but of our neighbour. Given all the complexity of the culture here, we need a greater commitment to love and humility. That's crucial. And associated with this also is a commitment to much healthier communication. We have to let go of some of the things that have been going on. We also need to be much better at being a welcoming place. We need to be particularly welcoming to new people. We do have a little bit of a problem that people come here normally because of the websites. They come here once and never come back again. So I think that has something to do with our content of our services. But importantly, we must be a welcoming people in all our activities. Next, we need a commitment to forgiveness. So we need to live the teaching of Mother Sandra and Father Collins in the forgiveness series that we had in Lent. And if you missed any of that, all of it is recorded in our podcasts, accessible through our website. We do need more people to commit time to volunteer roles in this church. As you know, we have no paid staff other than clergy, so we are totally dependent on volunteers, and therefore we are, and also very dependent on a few, and we need more. Next, we need a commitment to an everyday discipleship. This must not become a Sunday-only church, which is the great danger of becoming a network church. So, as with the evening service congregation, the Sunday morning congregation needs to think about how it participates in an everyday discipleship. And lastly, I'm asking for a greater generosity, that we are supportive of all the initiatives at St. Luke's here as a mixed economy parish. So if new monasticism is not your thing, then please be supportive of those who are called to live it. If the Sunday morning service is not your thing, then please be generous in supporting those who are called to participate and lead it. I want to see a greater appreciation and support of the diversity of things we do in the name of St. Luke's. And in this way, I do believe new fruit can grow, new seeds for the kingdom can flourish. As we fertilise and nourish the soil and the branches, as we prune back the things that are dead or lead to unhealthiness, as we graft our new branches to bear fruit, so we are called to serve God in this parish as we look forward in 2018 and 2019. And our goal remains to be a mixed economy or mixed ecology church. And so I hope these existing and new branches will become established in the next year, that we will see further growth in the new monastic community and Sunday service. evening service, that the new community cafe will make inroads with those who live around our parish and particularly connect to those who are struggling, who are poor and who are ill. I want to see the implementation of a youth church on Sunday mornings, and I want to build on the incredible work that AO has done in re-establishing a children's church. My heart still is very focused on a youth fresh expression in Kelly Park aimed at the unchurched and use the closed youth facilities of that park. And I want to see a revitalised and healthy Sunday morning congregation with again a renewal of focus on families. And so I hope these existing and new branches will become established. And I believe all this is achievable if our priorities are in the right place. We are branches and we need to grow them healthily. There are many things that we need to do as fellow gardeners, and we are called to do this together. So can I invite you to stand now and read this text with me, which is what Jesus calls us to be and become, and what happens when we live this way. So let's read together this text from Philippians chapter 2, which I think is calling us to obedience to the vine, taking Jesus as our example, and that we must recommit to being followers of the way of Jesus. So let us say this together. May our attitude be as that of Christ Jesus, who being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God as something to be grasped, but made himself nothing, taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness, and being found in appearance as a human, he humbled himself and became obedient to death, even death on a cross. Therefore God exalted him to the highest place, and gave him the name that is above every name, that at the name of Jesus every knee should bow, in heaven and in earth and under the earth, and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. Amen. And that concludes my report as your priest in charge as we look forward in 2018 and early 2019. Thank you for listening.